little bit. I don't know how long we're going to be here, but I'm going to put this in on the podcast episode as well. So, but yeah, would you like to introduce yourself in any sort of form or fashion,
Yeah.
like where you're from, all that kind of stuff?
Hello, I am from Venezuela, and that's all I'm going to say about where I'm from.
Okay.
Uh, and yeah, I'm a leftist. I'm an anarchist, in fact.
All right. That sounds good.
Okay.
All right. So you came into my stream. Like, do you have any experience with me, or did you just like come into the stream like randomly? Like you came in yesterday, I believe.
Yeah, I saw you yesterday, and I have previously seen a few other streamers, leftist streamers, YouTubers, and stuff. And you caught my attention, so here I am.
I try my best to catch people's attention. But yeah, so I don't remember. I think we were just saying something. Oh yeah, you chimed in when we were talking about the that portrait of Juan Guaido being taken down in the embassy in Bolivia. That was really funny. But yeah, I don't know much about the government or history of Venezuela. All I know is that, like, the recent stuff with like Juan Guaido is very questionable. So if you want to give me like that kind of more deeper understanding, that would be great.
Okay, cool. I'm going to give a brief recount of Venezuelan history.
Okay.
So in the beginning, there were the natives. Then the Spanish came and killed everyone, enslaved a few that survived. Cool.
Yeah,
then
I love when that
happens. Yeah, same in the whole planet. So then a few elite Spanish people and Spanish descendants that lived here said, hey, we don't want to pay more taxes. And they rebelled and turned Venezuela into a single country.
Okay.
But for the people, the natives that survived and the slaves that were brought from Africa, the situation didn't change so much.
So it's similar to America in that it was just kind of a revolution for the rich guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So right after that, we became some sort of feudalist society with a period called caudillismo, where a caudillo was like a feudal lord or a warlord.
Okay.
And that guy governed a certain area. Then after that, we had a period that was like a transition into a democracy, plagued with a lot of dictatorships in the middle. And then we had proper democracy, you could say, with some dictatorships in the middle. And all of those presidents and the dictators were all white guys, were all rich and racist, and piece of shit, everyone. So, in 1998, when Chavez came as a leftist candidate, he was a brown man, a native, and he told brown men, brown women, hey, do you want to be noticed in your country's politics? Do you want to have power? Do you want to stop being slaves to the white man? And of course, that narrative stick with a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And he won that election in a landslide. It was unprecedented. He got like 80% of the votes, something like that. I don't remember correctly. And everyone was happy and stuff. But the system, the Venezuelan government, was already corrupt. And that corruption didn't disappear with Chavez.
Right.
And a lot of people in the government, even in the new appointees, were corrupt. But that really didn't matter as long as the oil prices were high. In fact, The price was over $100 a barrel, if I remember correctly. Right now it's a year ago it was like 20. Right
Mm-hmm.
now, due to COVID, the price have dropped like negative due to lack of storage facilities.
Right.
But anyway, corruption isn't a problem as long as money is flowing. But money stopped flowing, like in 2013,
Yeah.
and that's
Now,
how the
where do
crisis started.
where do does the global community come in this situation? Like, I know that there are very severe economic sanctions on Venezuela. Like, I'm sure that that is playing a relatively large role. Correct?
Right now, it is.
Mm-hmm.
But when the crisis started, it wasn't.
Right.
The beginning of the crisis, was caused by us, by our own incompetence. I don't know that word. By our own corruption, by our own irresponsibility, and then a few sanctions came from the U.S. to some individual actors in our government, and I have no issue with that. Those are sanctions for a few rich guys.
Okay.
But then recently, the U.S. government sanctioned the whole country, and anyone that makes any kind of business with the Venezuelan state gets sanctioned. And in fact, a lot of companies in Europe and stuff are afraid to contact or do business with Venezuelan companies, not the Venezuelan state, because of fear of retaliation. When that is not a sanction, but people are scared.
Right. It's like fear
Other,
mongering tactics, you know? You want to try to block off the
yeah,
country from the international community so that they're alone, and then theoretically, when they're alone, that's when you strike.
exactly. That's exactly what happened. And other things that I had to mention is that due to the crisis, people started protesting in around 2013,
Mm-hmm.
and the government didn't take that critique kindly. So they started jailing, killing, and doing war crimes to the Venezuelan people from the Venezuelan government.
Right?
And I even I even remember accounts of girls, college girls, being in protests, being kidnapped by the state and raped in jail by
Right?
guards, while other guards are watching, while the other prisoners are watching.
No good.
And yeah, pretty much a Lukashenko style repression. So that's something that gave the US an excuse to put some sanctions on us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And some of those sanctions are okay. I mean, the sanctions against individuals are always okay. But the sanctions against a whole country hurt everyone.
So, real quick, like,
And
what was the state's excuse for kidnapping protesters and, violating human rights? What would, did they just, cover it up? Or did they say, it has to be this way? Or, what was their kind of, messaging at that time?
they tried to cover up some things that weren't confirmed in video. But the things that were confirmed in video, like a guy that got shot uh, in the neck by a soldier and he died almost in the spot, they say they were apatridas, that were anti-patriots, and they deserved it, and they were fascists, imperialists, and stuff. So that's pretty much the excuse that the Venezuelan state uses to shut down any kind of criticism.
Were they actually fascists? Is that true?
There are a few fascist people in right wing politics in Venezuela, but most people that got into politics are just liberals.
Okay.
Okay, And since we are traumatized by 20, 22 years of this government, most young people think that the free market is the solution for everything,
It's
since
like one
they
of those
haven't experienced
situations
it.
where the current government isn't good, and really all it is trying to dominate the messaging as like what the opposition should be. So instead of, opposing from the left and saying like, like we should be more anti-government, we should be like, a little bit more like skeptical of using the military on our own protesters, we should be more transparent. Instead of doing that, like the winning messaging seems to be like the free market, like American tradition kind of stuff. Is that correct?
I don't understand what you mean with that last few words.
Well, like
Eh,
the winning opposition message. Like if you don't like the government, then this is what you got to do. Like it's like here in the United States right now, we're having a very interesting situation, right? Where it's like if you say that Donald Trump is doing something bad, they claim that you're anti-American. And then Democrats will say, well, the opposition to Donald Trump is liberalism, not leftism. The leftism is hurting us. We have to be liberal in order to oppose Donald Trump. And they're trying to coalesce around the ideas of liberalism instead of more like socialism. Like, is it like that, where instead of like coalescing around the more libertarian or anarchist left-wing traditions, they're going to the maybe libertarian or anarchist right-wing traditions, as interesting and as not valuable as those are, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if I understand correctly, what you're saying is that they are framing any kind of opposition as fascist, and instead of being just liberal capitalist.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. It's just a feature of nationalist, authoritarian governments to frame everybody as some kind of extremist that will destroy the country and rape your rights and stuff.
Yeah, that sucks. And then, like, so what's the government's response during all this? Are they, like, doubling down on their agenda and policies and just, like, saying everyone that disagrees with us is a fascist? Are they ignoring, like, more left-wing people? Like, what is, like, kind of like if you were to break down in percentages, like, maybe, like, how much of the country is, like, left-wing versus liberal versus, like, right-wing or whatever?
Okay. Most of the country, most people have no idea of politics, just know that the government is bad.
Right.
Is bad. And due to propaganda, think that the only other option is free market capitalism.
Right.
And most people worship capitalism. There is a tiny minority of people that are leftists, like me, and disagree with the government. But that percentage is so tiny that wouldn't even register in a graphic.
Like, is it enough to be able to, like, win an election, maybe? Like, if there was an election with a more left-wing candidate, would you, like, do you think you'd be able to swing people in that direction? Like, do you think these people that believe in free markets are too far gone, or?
Too far gone, absolutely.
Okay.
This is a country that has been traumatized by Chavismo, just like a lot of Russians are traumatized by Stalinism, and a lot of ex-Soviet republics are traumatized with the Soviet Union as well. So they reject any kind of movement towards the left as some sort of authoritarian, they will take your toothbrush sort of thing.
Right.
And people are afraid. I mean, Venezuela does not have the material conditions to transition to a more socialist government. The only way up is liberal capitalism, and then when the people feel the consequences of liberal capitalism, then they can go to the left, but to a progressive and liberal left.
Right. So, like, how long do you think it would take to get to that position? Like, do you view, like, a compromise with liberals to defeat Maduro is a good thing, even though like in the short term it could give you worse policies, but it could in the long term bring things back more to the left? Like, what do you think is like the strategy here?
Yeah.
Is okay.
Uh,
How long do you think that
First
would
of
take?
all, I don't know, 20, 30 years.
Okay, yeah, so that's like a
Uh,
long-term
the,
project.
the thing is that there must be more young people that go to the left, but not a Chavista left, but a libertarian left.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have that right now. We just don't have it. So our best option is to embrace. I hate saying this, but we have to embrace some sort of liberal capitalism to guarantee some sort of economic recovery, even if their policies are trash.
So like
But
you were
right
saying
now,
basically,
yeah.
like as far as like the Juan Guaido situation, right? Like that guy is like he seems like kind of like a right-wing dude. Like you want to try to like mitigate the fall because like it seems that Maduro's kind of situation is like a ticking time bomb, and you want to make sure that whatever replaces it is as further to the left as you could possibly get, even if it is further to the right than Maduro. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
you could say. But we don't have many options. I mean, we have Maduro, Guaido, and no one.
So there's like really no middle
In
ground in
fact,
between them?
no. Venezuelan politics is screwed, completely screwed.
Yeah, that sucks.
And yeah. But well, we have to be pragmatic. I cannot go out with a Stalin banner and say, yeah, let's go to the left, even more to the left, because people will say, what the fuck is wrong with you? Get the fuck out of here and stuff. Yeah, that's the complicated state of Venezuelan politics. So,
Yeah, like
any other questions?
yeah, I mean I do actually. I have many questions. I would even say that these questions could be classified as tremendous questions. Um so like when it comes to the foreign policy situation, because again, my lens to viewing the situation of Venezuela is that to my understanding, Maduro might be preferable to Guaido. Would you disagree or agree with that? Like, do you like? Okay,
I disagree with that.
you disagree. So you think like Guaido is like a necessary evil in order to push more to the left later. Like you feel that like Maduro is something you need to get rid of sooner than later. Is that correct? Like,
Yes.
so even if like again like short-term losses, like I'm trying to think of an analogy here for, I guess like the American election situation. It's like, you know, Biden versus Trump. You don't like Trump, right? You don't like Biden, but Biden's going to bring us in some sort of direction where theoretically we can build on that at a later point. You know what I mean? Like, whereas like your situation
Yeah,
is you don't like both
that's
of them,
what
but like you need to get rid of that incumbent to shake the system up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So are there like many like groups? Like how's like what is the like are there like mutual aid networks? Are there any sort of like unions? Like what are these situations like labor rights and stuff in Venezuela?
Oh, there are a few unions, all controlled by the government,
Right. Okay.
and the kind of benefits they get are you can fire me even if I punch my boss in the face.
That sounds pretty
But
good.
they don't.
I'd love to punch my boss in the face. I don't have a boss, but
Yeah,
if I did, I'd punch him.
I do too. I do too, but the kind of protections they give are like you cannot fire an employee even if that employee is stealing from the customers. That's the kind of protection unions give.
Okay. And would you say
But
that like
they don't negotiate nice wages or something.
okay. Yeah, like what's the I know one of the things in Venezuela is like the currency situation. Would you want to like go in on that like I know that the currency is like people do these like memes where it's like you got like a whole like living rooms worth of dollars, and it's equivalent to like a roll of toilet paper thing. You know, like is that true? Would it like what like can you describe that kind of the inflation and stuff like that?
Yeah, pretty much. With the currency from 1 or 2 years ago, you can buy, I don't know, a shirt with a truck full of money from 1 or 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, every now and then the government prints new bills that account for more currency.
Right.
And
So like
in
it would be
order
like,
to,
you
yeah,
know, people were using $1 or $2 bills, and now the government's going to produce $10 bills. That kind of situation.
kinda.
Okay.
So, in order to avoid, what was that African country with the $1 trillion bill? Zimbabwe?
I'm not sure.
I think it was Zimbabwe. I might be wrong. But in order to avoid the Zimbabwean $1 trillion bill scenario, the government just started doing this. Hey, given that now you need a million bolivars to buy a shirt, let's take 3 zeros of our currency. And now, one bolivar fuerte is equivalent to 1,000 bolivars, and they print new bills.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, since 2006, they have removed 8 zeros from our currency.
Okay. And how is that like affecting the
So,
economy? Like, are people making enough money to subsist? Are like, what's that situation like?
well, most people make enough money to stay alive, and that's something. But being alive, it is not eating well. Being alive is not receiving medical care.
Right.
Being alive is not having access to internet or education or anything.
It
So
kind of
there
just
are a
keeps
lot
them
of people
stuck there,
starving.
right? Like they're just kind of stuck
Yeah,
in a loop where it's like, you know, you
yeah,
can't
yeah, yeah.
really move up, but you have the bare minimum to survive. So like they're not really like. Do you think that like people would revolt if they had slightly less? Like, what do you think that situation would be like? Like, is it like one of those situations where they're just trying to give people the bare minimum to prevent some sort of revolution?
Well, they are giving the people the bare minimum because, in optics level, it is pretty bad when a whole town shows up dead because they cannot eat.
Right.
That's pretty bad. But they are right now, given that people have no money to buy anything, and giving people like a box full of, well, a tiny box with, I don't know, 1 kilo of flour. I don't know how much is that in pounds. Why do you guys not use the metric system? You're
I
weird.
apologize on behalf of America.
And I accept your apology.
Okay, thank you.
Anyway, a lot of households receive a tiny box full of a few essentials each month. But a lot of households don't, and a lot of households receive that box incomplete because the people that are in charge of that are corrupt, and they often take out a few products to resell them at inflated prices in the black market afterwards.
So there's like a black
And
market for like flour?
yeah,
Uh,
it is
all
very
right.
weird. You can be in the street and there's a guy in a corner, like he's going to sell you drugs, but he says in a low voice, so only you can hear it. I have flour. Do you want my flour?
I'm
I'm not
walking around,
exaggerating.
I'm looking for someone to buy heroin, and instead I get stuck with a bag of flour, and I thought like it's just like a euphemism, like they can't legally say heroin, and then they literally give me a bag of flour. Is that correct? Is that a situation?
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
that's exactly what's happening. I mean, the situation has uh, that situation has diminished a lot in these few months, given that people are just trading openly, and the police seem to not care. But yeah, the last year that was pretty frequent. There could be a guy sitting in a box, and then when you walk by, he slightly opens the box, revealing flour or sugar, or maybe even cooking oil. It was very funny and sad.
So like, okay, so we're talking about flour here, and so like, what is like the health and nutrition situation in like, because like flour, I mean, you can do a lot with it, but it's not necessarily healthy. You know what I mean? Like in the United States of America, for example, like when you go to a grocery store, like 95% of the food at a grocery store is processed and extremely unhealthy. Is that a similar situation in Venezuela? Do you have like farmers markets with like fresh vegetables? Like, are those easily acquirable? Like, what is that situation like?
Uh, yeah, there are a lot of farmer markets, as you put it,
Okay.
selling fresh vegetables, but those vegetables are expensive, and not everybody can buy enough to have a healthy food. And so a lot of people just buy one or two things and complete the rest with flour.
Right.
That's it.
So just like it, like again, doing like that bare minimum, but like there's really
Yeah.
no like like I guess technically access, you know, in like the literal sense to healthy food, but there's no like accessibility to that healthy food. Like, yeah, you can go buy it, but with what money? You know, like that kind of situation.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening.
Okay.
In fact, pre-COVID, when you could go out and see the city, I like to walk a lot, and you could see a lot of homeless kids, uh, more often black kids, with blonde hair, and you wonder, okay, what is going on? Is there a mutation that causes a lot of kids to have blonde hair despite being black? And when you study the subject more closely, they aren't blonde. They aren't just eating enough. They are. There's a malnutrition problem, especially when for the extremely poor people, and their body is not producing enough melanin. I think I don't know. Whatever makes your hair, whatever
I
makes
think it's
your
like
hair go
pigmentation
black.
or whatever.
Yeah. Your body is not producing enough pigmentation for your hair, so you're blonde with an afro.
And it's like, yeah, that's yeah. And that's like a common occurrence, would you say?
Yeah, pretty much.
Like are most people like even, you know, just like most people in general, like are they visibly malnourished?
Yes, but not at that extent. That
Okay.
extent is only for the kids that eat from the garbage in the cities, or a lot of kids from rural areas. And yeah, it's very sad.
So, okay, what's the situation with like you know, like people can't buy food from the farmers markets necessarily? What happens to the farmers? Are they able to sell enough? Are like what is their
Yes,
situation?
yes, they can sell enough because they aren't producing enough. In fact, if they were producing enough, they will lower the prices and free market their way into selling everything.
I see.
But since they aren't producing enough, they sell vegetables at a price that allows them to subsist and to keep farming. But our productivity is on the floor. A lot of farms are closed or not producing. The state expropriated a lot of farms, a lot of farmland, and
Mhm.
then did nothing with it.
Hey, when that happens.
So we have So we have miles and miles and miles of fertile land that is not being used,
And
while
there's
a
like,
lot of people are starving.
are people calling for them to use that, or like theoretically, couldn't they just start something like that tomorrow? Like, what's keeping them from not being able to do that?
I have no idea.
All right. All right. Well, do you have
I don't
anything
know.
else you want to say?
Yeah, there's a genocide going on right now
Okay.
regarding our natives.
Got to make sure we don't like
Um,
miss out on that. That seems pretty important.
yeah. Um, we recently discovered a lot of diamonds and gold and stuff in the center of our country, in lands that belong to the natives. So a lot of natives have been enslaved in order to get those resources. And a lot of the natives that oppose the mining and the polluting are outright killed.
So it's like one of those
So
situations where like you find diamonds and it's like you should be happy, but you're scared because that means like you're probably going to get killed for them.
yeah, exactly.
That sucks. And what's the government doing
Not
about
for
that?
resources. Oh, the government is killing them.
Okay, so they're the ones actually going about doing all that? Like how open is it? Like are they like sending soldiers to shoot them down, or like what's going on?
It's more like. Are you familiarized with the term colectivo?
Say that one more time. Collectivo?
Colectivos.
Collectivos? I'm afraid not.
Okay. The government, in the beginning, in the Chavez era, started getting friendly with criminals, with thieves and kidnappers and gangs, saying that they aren't really bad. They are just products of their environment, and to a certain extent, that's right. But that doesn't mean that you will not jail a rapist.
Right,
And
yeah.
that means that
Like
you
you can
should prevent
explain how
more
something
rapists.
happened without like saying that it's automatically okay that it did happen. Like it's good to know why things are occurring
Yeah,
so we can prevent them from occurring in the future, right? Like but that doesn't mean that what this person did is automatically okay.
yeah. So the government started legitimizing gangs, and in fact, there are several areas in the country where the cops don't go there because the local gangs are supposed to be the cops.
Okay.
And of course, that's obviously dangerous. A lot of gangs kidnap people and just take them to those areas, making a rescue impossible.
Mhm.
And so the government has that as an unofficial military that they can use to do their dirty jobs.
Right. So it's
So
just like
those
and
people,
then they have plausible deniability. I don't know what you're talking about. It wasn't us. And I'm sorry that it
yeah,
happened.
exactly.
Wasn't us. That sucks. But I mean, I don't. What do you want us to do about it? You know, like that's kind of what their reaction is like.
Yes, that's exactly what's happening. Those collectivos sometimes show up in protests. Sometimes they start shooting people in protests,
Right. Okay.
and the government does nothing.
They
In
just
fact,
like okay. Okay. Real quick,
sorry.
to make like a comparison to the United States, is this like similar to when you have groups like the Proud Boys that will go to these rallies and just beat the shit out of people, and the cops just like they see it happen, it's on video, the cops are looking at it,
Yeah.
and then they do nothing? It's like one of those situations.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening.
Okay.
In fact, a few years ago, during a protest, some cops started shooting at some collectivos that were shooting unarmed people in protests, and the cops were fired.
What? That's pretty open and shut.
Yep. Yeah.
Sucks. So like okay, let's so is there anything else that you think is of major importance?
Oh yeah. Where I was going with the genocide and
Right.
the collectivo. The government has a lot of people similar to collectivos in those native lands that do the dirty jobs for them, often with the military. And at the end, they often give those lands to Chinese or Russian uh, companies so they can extract the wealth, and they use that to pay for some loans that we, or well, Venezuela, the Venezuelan government, have received from Russia or China.
And are those like some of the only countries that are able to do business, like without having to deal with the economic warfare thing going on?
As I understand it, I might be wrong on this, but as I understand it, China and Russia do business with Maduro because they don't care, and the U.S. government won't pursue action against them,
Right, because it's like,
especially
they're
when
big and bad
Putin
enough.
has, yeah, and Putin and Xi have Trump under their thumb, so they can do anything they want.
And so they're just basically, using that situation to just have like an influence in the region more than anything, and then also they can get some cool stuff out of it.
Yeah. And in fact, I was arguing a few days ago that the sanctions made by the U.S. government, in fact, are bad for the U.S. government itself, because with those sanctions, Venezuela starts depending more and more of China and Russia, and that is not good for the U.S. I mean, we can even have a Cuba missiles crisis situation.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it seems very complicated. Yeah, I don't know. Everything sucks. Like, just all around the world, everything fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Do you have, like, hope that,
Uh,
that things are gonna improve? Like, you said, like, maybe 20 or 30 years from now we could get something good, right? But, like, is that gonna require, how much effort is that gonna require? Like, that's gonna probably require a lot of work to mobilize that kind of base, right?
I don't like making predictions.
Right.
I think that whatever happens, everything will still suck.
Okay.
I mean, that's the only prediction I make.
Is that it's probably not gonna be good.
People, yeah. That's all I can say.
I mean, that's probably an accurate prediction.
Well, I have said everything I wanted to say. Do
Okay.
you have any more questions or chat? Does chat have any
If the
questions?
chat has any specific questions, feel free to write them below, or write them now, and then I'll ask my question to give that a little bit of a buffer time. So okay, like you said that internet access is not available to a lot of people. Like now, I've seen a lot of information coming from Venezuela that has this like we need that right wing free market stuff. That like a lot of information that I see on Venezuela is coming from the internet, which disproportionately would mean that most people with internet access are probably wealthier, meaning they would be more likely to like, benefit from these right wing
Yeah, right wing.
policies. Is that correct? Like,
Yes and no, because the wealth required to have internet access is not necessarily real wealth. I mean, if you live in the capital or any big city, you can have internet access, even if it isn't very good, because you use the infrastructure built by previous governments or even this government when it worked. Now it doesn't. But you can use that infrastructure without having to buy a whole lot of equipment. So, I mean, I will say that is some sort of a mixed bag. You can have poor people with internet access as long as they bought their computer and their internet access before the crisis.
okay. Okay. I don't know, because like a lot of the times when I see people like on Twitter threads or whatever saying that like Maduro's evil, they when you look into them, they tend to be like maybe not like wealthy, but like on the wealthier side of things. that, like, I don't know, that could just
Yeah,
be
yeah,
their
yeah.
agenda. Like, the more wealthier people want to be more outspoken against the government, like, on social media and stuff. That could be also the case.
Uh, uh, Pretty much anyone should post the government regardless of economic status, because poor people are affected by the government as well. In fact, last time I saw statistics on this, the government had only a 15% approval rate, which means that 85% of Venezuelans don't like the government.
Yeah, I mean, with all the things that you're saying, I don't blame them.
Yeah.
But it's, again, one of those
So,
situations where it's like the government might technically be kind of better on a lot of issues than what the leading alternative is. But at the same time, like, the major issues, the leading alternative might be a little bit better. So it could be like a short-term trade-off. And I don't know. Like,
yeah,
I don't live there, so obviously
might be.
I can't really make a calculation so much. But
Although I will say that the most vital or most important benefit of this government is free healthcare and those monthly boxes you get. But that means shit when those boxes are half empty and the hospitals are full of doctors and nurses that don't know what to do because they have no equipment.
right. Ah.
So yeah, I will, even as a leftist, I will be welcoming of a right-wing government as long as they fix at least a tenth of the crisis.
I don't know. It sounds like making a deal with the devil, but I mean, when it's the only deal on the table, it's kind of hard not to, right?
Yeah, I mean, I prefer making a deal with the devil when God is trying to kill me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know. That's a good point. That's a good point. If God's looking down on you and saying, "Bitch, motherfucker," I don't know. The devil seems to be like a good option sometimes. But yeah, we don't really have that many substantive questions from the chat room. That they for the most part appreciate you coming on here. I don't know if you have it up or not, but anyway, do you have anything else you want to say, or do you want to wrap up?
Yeah, just one thing. If there are any tankies in the chat defending Maduro, fuck off. I haven't read the chat, but I know you're there. Everyone else, I love you. I'm sending you hugs from Venezuela with my skinny arms affected by the famine.
Okay.
And that's it. Well, thank you for having me on, and I
Yeah,
hope you
no
have
problem.
a great day.
If anything major happens that you want to have a platform to speak about, feel free to let me know.
Okay, thank you, Andrea.
Yep, awesome. You have a great day, and thank you all for watching Above It's All for November 11th. And hopefully this was educational. I like being educational. I like my platform being educational. And that's all I have to say. That's my outro. Thank you for watching. Y'all have a good one. And I'm turning the
Bye.
stream off.
Bye.